So, when did you first become involved with Valley's Kids?
I first became involved when it was Penygraig Community Project. So, yes, my pathway was probably a bit different to others because I was employed by social services, but I applied for the job of warden of the Rhondda IT Centre. I'll explain what a warden is and what an IT centre is in due course. So I was appointed to that in the year 1980.
So, tell me then that you were part within the organisation.
At that time, there was the practice in looking at in children, care of children, was quite a lot of them ended up either in custody or removed from their families and living in foster care or residential care. And there were growing numbers of those children, as particularly in an area like Rhondda, which is blighted by the loss of employment and the things that happened subsequent to that. So poverty, problems were by and large associated with poverty, lack of opportunities, kids feeling pretty disenfranchised and feeling they've got no future. So there were considerable problems emerging for young people at that time, and unfortunately some of the responses were punitive, as I saw it at that time. They were being punished for things that really weren't within their control. And some of it was very much about family circumstances and so on. So Penygraig Community Project were pioneers in the work with young people of with those sorts of problems. And they approached social services and the education department and said, can we work together in dealing with some of those issues? As I said, it was very innovative. There were no real examples of that anywhere else. So we had to make up our own pathway, I think. So I joined without knowing probably what I was signing up for. Isn't that true of Valley's kids generally? And it's inevitable that you think you're going down a certain pathway, and then you find out that actually you're asked to jump and do something probably entirely different. So, as you can imagine, it's quite hard bringing together three organisations to co-manage a project that really didn't have any precedents. People didn't necessarily understand what they wanted to do. So, very much about finding our way. And I think I was just very fortunate in falling into an environment, with people like Howell and Margaret and Richard, and they were pioneering working directly with young people who were experiencing problems in a way that wasn't done before that. So I think I learned a huge amount just in those initial months about what might be possible, but we still had to make it up. And it was within social services, an interesting debate, because social services can be quite authoritarian as well. And they don't always trust children, and they don't always trust families to do the right thing. So there is an element sometimes of coercion and feeling that you push people down. As I say, ultimately you might remove them from home. You might recommend that they go into custody even at the age of 11, 12. Sometimes for issues such as not even attending school. So it wasn't an easy time for young people then in the 80s, and of course we had Thatcherism and all the problems about not supporting communities and not supporting certain people within those communities as well. So I think a lot of young people felt very disempowered, very alienated. Quite a lot of them would drop out quite quickly from school, long before they should have done. So high truancy levels, high levels of crime amongst young people as well. So we wanted to deal with that in a new way. We didn't quite know what that meant and what we were letting ourselves in for, really, in many ways. But eventually we fell into. My background was in social work. So I'd always worked with young people. I was a social worker attached to a school for what they called maladjusted children, residential school for maladjusted children, which is in a way you can see then how children were classified, and I suppose they weren't cared for necessarily. It felt to me. I think they were also regimented and forced into dormitories and things like that. So it was quite a harsh environment. So we wanted to get away from that. So how could we do that? Well, first of all, we had to have the debate in social services. They wanted us to work with what they would see as being willing young people. The ones who you could reach out to and they would very quickly respond, and with the support of Penygraig Community Project, we said no, we want to deal with the most difficult children in the community because they are the ones who are most at risk. So that was an interesting internal debate that had to be had, and we didn't always make ourselves very popular in taking that stance. It was seen as being a bit anti-authoritarian, I suppose. Yeah, classic dispute, isn't it, about how best to respond to kids' needs and families' needs. So we ultimately decided that we would have about 8 children at a time coming to us as an alternative to school. So we provided for them for 4 days a week, and arranged a placement for them for the other day, sometimes back in their own schools. And then we had to find ways of filling their days. So at that time, I think what I most enjoyed was just the opportunity to talk to people who had their backgrounds were in youth and community work or in probation or education, but they all saw that the systems within those organisations in terms of their response to children were flawed. So they were all looking for opportunities to work together and to work in different ways. So we pioneered quite a lot of new approaches in terms of the things that we were doing in terms of formal education, but we did a lot of group work, we did quite a lot of outdoor pursuits, which also attracted some criticism. Treats for naughty children. This isn't what we're meant to do. We did quite a lot of social education in terms of life skills, and we had good experiences together. So we'd always go off at least half a day a week to sometimes down to the coast and places to do outdoor pursuits and outdoor education. So that was those are the kids who'd had the roughest times, I think. Some of them had been in custody and were coming back. Some of them had been in care, and that's where they were living. So they were finding life a real struggle, challenge, I suppose, in terms of they didn't lead structured lives, put it mildly. So you couldn't always guarantee they would be home. You can guarantee that they've always been behaving themselves either. So there was a lot of negotiation to be done about how could we collectively, as a group of adults and as a group of young people, come together and create something that was going to be helpful. Yeah, and I think we were very, very fortunate in the environment that we had. Penygraig Community Project was designed to be accommodating and welcoming to children with those sorts of difficulties, and they very quickly recognised that. And it was surprising how quickly a culture built up of everybody was helping one another, without too much. There wasn't a great use of authority, which is again in contrast to people still using physical punishment on children in those days, including schools. So it was an opportunity to try something that we felt would be far more effective. And so that was our day group, and they were all very interesting characters. And we, although it was a closed group, people came in spent time with us and then went on to other things. It wasn't that they stayed with us permanently. Some stayed longer than others. So there was no wasn't a fixed program in the sense that you have to come for 10 weeks, learn everything, and then we drop you in, and then it's down to you. So we built up relationships with families, built up relations who really appreciated the fact that their kids were in a safe environment, which wasn't always the case for them. We built up very strong relationships with the young people. Yeah, and it was exciting. Particularly group work, I think. Not many people did group work with psychodrama and approaches really to looking with kids at the difficulties that they had. And some of them were in had profound problems in terms of their behaviour and in terms of their relationships with adults and relationships with the adult world. So it was hard, and we learnt a lot very, very quickly. But you had to be in a position to survive. And as I say, very fortunate in the people we had in Penygraig Community Project who assisted us. We had volunteers, we had staff, and they were superb. I was always fortunate with staff, whether they were from a teaching background or social work background. Some were from probation and so on. They were always exceptional, because you had to be exceptional, I think, in order to be able to thrive in that environment. And then once that was established, and that took a little time, we wanted to move on then and have open groups for younger children in the evenings and weekends. We wanted to work with girls, because girls didn't always necessarily fit very well within mixed groups. And we also ran a summer scheme for young people throughout the Rhondda, most in a sort of preventive way, because it's a time of peak crime and peak family disruption. Families very quickly find it hard to tolerate having their kids around them all the time when they're causing problems. And so I think it was, so we spent a lot of time traipsing the valleys and picking kids up and taking them out and doing activities. But it was, it suited all of us as well. We felt we were doing exceptional work, and people responded. They weren't all successes, inevitably. I mean, some kids were very entrenched in criminal behaviour, and their families were. It was hard to break that sort of pattern. But even there, we had successes, and some kids saw different sorts of opportunities for the path they were taking. Spent a lot of time in court arguing the case for kids to come to us rather than be sent away. Had some few clashes with judges and magistrates along the way. Police weren't always necessarily very sympathetic to what we did. Some were openly hostile, and sometimes they, as I say, the kids couldn't resist going back to some of the things where they were involved in crime, and they saw that as their career almost. But so we did that for 10 years almost. I think one of the things for which Valley's kids needs to have immense credit is they are always willing to try something new in response to needs that the communities develop, communities make apparent. That's what gives you the opportunity. When you know that you're meeting a need that the community's already recognised for themselves, you're prepared to try it, aren't you? Get the money to do it, which has always been one of the struggles. It's constantly evolved. Even if it's only just in terms of a change of name, that came as a bit of a surprise in some ways, because we were always the Rhondda IT Centre, and this was always Penygraig Community Project. But as I say, evolved and moved on.
Yeah, and especially when they had buildings in other communities within the Rhondda.
Exactly.
Then it wasn't just Penygraig.
No.
It was,
No.
even though it was always Penygraig Community Project,
Yeah.
it had to change and it had to evolve then when they went to different paths.
And we loved working in Mardy. Penygraig was, almost a bomb site in those when we first started there. But just seeing the difference with communities coming together and meeting the needs of the kids themselves. So I think it's one of the most exciting things about Rhondda and RCT, isn't it? Is you've got lots of individual communities who've got their own identity. And if you can harness that, that's what people want. They want something run, like here, isn't it? It'll always be the bike club. Yeah.
Well, you sort of answered the next question I was going to ask you, which is, sort of like, why is Valley's Kids important to you? If you want to, you can elaborate on that. But also, why do you think Valley's Kids is important to the communities in which we serve?
Yeah. Important. I think it's partly about there are so many role models around within Valley's Kids. People who would be regarded as, in some respects, world leading in terms of the work that they undertake. But they're so prepared to do it in a local environment on behalf of local people. And I see that as being crucial, really, both to their success, but also in terms of what it allows us to do. It's an amazing team, isn't it? That's people who are around and have been here for a very long time. And an organisation has remained true to its mission and true to its values, which is not always easy. I've been involved in lots of other community projects over the years as well, and some of them have just not been able to achieve that. Yeah, I can't think of many community development organisations that still exist after this length of time. So we've obviously been doing something right. What does it mean? Well, if I would just go back to my original starting point, which is, as I say, as a person who led the IT Centre, those kids were spared some very harsh experiences. And those families were as well, because having your children either in prison or in care is soul destroying. Yeah, so they benefited, and showed it. It was made clear. Yeah.
And I think that's what's nice when we've done interviews with other people, and in particular Margaret and Richard, because I think it's lovely when you hear we've interviewed some of they were the younger people in the
of course,
kids that are now people in their 50s, early 60s.
Absolutely.
And they still hold Valley's Kids in such high regard in their comments and in still being able to feel that they can still pop in through the doors.
Yes.
And I'm sure, like you said, there are lots of people that you did make a difference to.
Yeah.
So that must be nice for you when you see these people years later.
It's something about a feeling of belonging, isn't it? And if there's one thing that we all need, is a feeling of belonging, and Valley's Kids contributes to that in so many different ways. And I think it's always been a core theme. This is support for you. It's not imposed. We don't have unrealistic expectations about the response that you might get, but it's available. Opportunities are available. So yeah, I've not come across anywhere else, I think, that is like Valley's Kids. I've got quite a wide experience now of across large numbers of organisations. For me, I think still it has unique elements, and one of those is just respecting the people that you're providing help to. Yeah, it's for them. It's not for you, and it's not with great expectations that they in any way have to give lots back. It's just a helping hand, isn't it? Yeah. But still been there for a long time. hopefully will stay there for a long time to come.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. So, is
Yeah.
there anything else that you want to add, Phil?
I suppose just a little sadness, which is, you know, when I moved on, I worked quite a lot with child psychiatrists and people like that. I'm not sure there's the same willingness to challenge boundaries and on behalf of children. I'm not sure I'm not sure they get wonderful advocacy really. And we've seen some projects, haven't we, that we thought were immensely valuable to communities and not being able to keep them going because the finance isn't there and getting harder. So some fears for the future in terms of how can we sustain this, despite the fact it's proven value, and I think that's recognised, but that doesn't mean people put their hands in their pockets and give the funding that's needed. So, and it's generally something in society, isn't it, about kids still being quite lost and very vulnerable, and the help not being available to them for all sorts of reasons, and that's not acceptable, really, is it? Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.